Cennino Cennini, The Craftsman Handbook, A Documentary History of Art, Volume 1. Cennino Cennini was born about 1370 near Florence. A record of 1398 shows that as a young man, he went to Padua, where he found work in the service of Francesco de Carrera, married, and probably lived the rest of his life. He was a pupil of Agnolo Gaddi, who had been a pupil of Tati Gaddi, who in turn was a pupil of Giotto. Thus, Cennini is a direct artistic descendant of Giotto and the inheritor of the traditional practices of the 14th century Italian workshop. There are no known works by Cennini in existence today. Cennini's importance is due to his Libro dell'Arte, the Craftsman Handbook, which stands between the medieval and modern periods and contains elements of both. While considering nature to be the best master, Cennini provides the student of painting with medieval precepts and examples similar to those found in the Theophilus writings. The proportions of man are discussed here for the first time in a treatise on art, but Cennini's knowledge of anatomy is biblical and medieval. For the first time since antiquity, artistic fantasy is recognized. This, Cennini says, when it accompanies technical skills, enables an artist to represent as reality that which is an imitation of nature. The concept establishes the distinction between the mechanical and the fine arts. That will, however, be fully realized only much later, for in Cennini's book there is as yet no separation between the two. The Craftsman Handbook. Here begins the Craftsman's Handbook, made and composed by Cennini of Choli in the reverence of God and of the Virgin Mary and Saint Eustace, and of Saint Francis, and of Saint Baptist, and of Saint Anthony of Padua, and in general of all the saints, God, and in the reverence of Giotto, of Taddeo, and of Agnolo, Cennini's master, and for the use and good and profit of anyone who wants to enter this profession. The first chapter of the first section of this book is in the beginning, when Almighty God created heaven and earth. Above all animals and foods, he created man and woman in his own image, endowing them with every virtue. Then, because of the misfortune which fell upon Adam, through envy from Lucifer, who by his malice and cunning beguiled him, or rather Eve, and then Eve Adam, into sin against the Lord's command. Because of this, therefore, God became angry with Adam, and had him driven him and his companions forth out of paradise, saying to them, inasmuch as you have disobeyed the command which God gave you, by your struggles and exertions you shall carry on your lives. And so Adam, recognizing the error which he had committed, after being so royally endowed by God as the source, beginning, and father of us all, realized theoretically that some means of living by labor had to be found. And so he started with the spade, and Eve with spinning. Man afterward pursued many useful occupations differing from each other, and some were and are more theoretical than others. They could not all be alike, since theory is the most worthy. Close to that, man pursued some related to the one which calls for a basis of that coupled with skill of hand, and this is an occupation known as painting, which calls for imagination and skill of hand, in order to discover things not seen, hiding themselves under the shadow of natural objects, and to fix them with the hand, presenting to plain sight what does not actually exist, and it justly deserves to be enthroned next to theory, and to be crowned with poetry. The justice lies in this that the poet with his theory, though he have but one, it makes him worthy, is free to compose and bind together, or not as he pleases, according to his inclination. In the same way, the painter is given freedom to compose a figure standing seated, half man, half horse, as he pleases, according to his imagination. So then, either as a labor of love for all those who feel within them a desire to understand, as a means of embellishing these fundamental theories with some jewel, that they may be set forth royally, without reserve, offering to these theories whatever little understanding God has granted me. As an unimportant practicing member of the profession of painting, I, Cennini, the son of Andrea Cennini of Colli di Val d'Ailsa, I was trained in the profession for 12 years by my master, Agnolo di Taddeo of Florence. He learned this profession from Taddeo, his father, and his father was christened under Giotto, and was his follower of 24 years, and that Giotto changed the profession of painting from Greek back into Latin, and brought it up to date, and he had more finished craftsmanship than anyone has had since. To minister to all those who wish to enter the profession, I will make note of what was taught me by the aforesaid Agnolo, my master, and of what I have tried out with my own hand, first invoking the aid of High Almighty God, the Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. Then the most delightful advocate of all sinners, Virgin Mary, and Saint Luke, the evangelistic, the first Christian painter, and of my advocate, Saint Eustace, and in general of all the saints of paradise. Amen. Chapter 2. Sorry about this. How some enter the profession through loftiness of spirit and some for profit. It is not without the impulse of a lofty spirit that some are moved to enter this profession, attractive to them through nature enthusiasm. Their intellect will take delight in drawing, provided their nature attracts to them to it of themselves, without any master's guidance, out of loftiness of spirit, and then through this delight they come to want to find a master, and they bind themselves to him with respect for authority, undergoing an apprenticeship in order to achieve perfection in all of this. There are those who pursue it because poverty and domestic need for profit and enthusiasm for the profession too, but above all these are to be extolled the ones who enter the profession through a sense of enthusiasm and exultation. Chapter 3. Fundamental provisions for anyone who enters this profession. You therefore who are with lofty spirit are fired with this ambition and are about to enter the profession, begin by decking yourselves with this attire: enthusiasm, reverence, obedience, and constancy, and begin to submit yourself to the direction of a master of instruction as early as you can, and do not leave the master until you have to. Chapter 4. How the schedule shows you into how many sections and branches the occupations are divided. The basis of this profession, the very beginning of all of these manual operations, is drawing and painting. These two sections call for a knowledge of the following: how to work up or grind, how to apply size, to put cloth on cloth, to gesso, to scrape the gesso and smooth them down, to model with the gesso, to lay bolle, to gild, to burnish, to temper, to lay in, to pounce, to scrape through this, to stamp or punch, to mark out, to paint, to embellish, and to varnish on panel and To work on a wall, you have to wet down, to plaster, to true up, to smooth off, to draw, to paint in fresco, to carry to completion in secco, to temper, to embellish, to finish on the wall. And let this be the schedule of the aforesaid stages, which I, with what little knowledge I have acquired, will expound section by section. Chapter 27. How should I endeavor to copy and draw after as few masters as possible? Now you must forge ahead so that you may pursue the course of this theory. You have made your tinted papers. In the next thing is to draw. You should adopt this method, having first practiced drawing for a while, as I have taught you above. That is, on a little panel, take pains and pleasure in constantly copying the best things which you can find done by the hand of great masters. And if you are in a place where many good masters have been, so much the better for you. But I give you this advice: take care to select the best one every time, and the one who is the greatest reputation. And as you go on from day to day, it will be against nature if you do not get some grasp of his style and of his spirit. For if you undertake to copy after one master today and after another one tomorrow, you will not acquire the style of either one or the other, and you will inevitably, through enthusiasm, become capricious, because each style will be distracting your mind. You will try to work in this man's way today and the other's tomorrow, and so you will not get either of them right. If you follow the course of one man through constant practice, your intelligence would have to be crude indeed, for you not to get some nourishment from it. Then you will find, if nature has granted you any imagination at all, that you will eventually acquire a style individual to yourself, and it cannot help being good, because your hand and your mind, being always accustomed to gather flowers, would ill know how to pluck thorns. Chapter 28. How beyond masters you should constantly copy from nature with steady practice. Mind you, the most perfect steersman that you can have and the best helm lie in the triumphal gateway of copying from nature, and this outdoes all other models. And always rely on this with a stout heart, especially as you begin to gain some judgment in draftsmanship. Do not fail as you go on to draw something every day, for no matter how little it is, it will be well worthwhile and will do you a world of good. Chapter 29. How you should regulate your life in the interest of decorum and condition of your hand, and in what company and what method you should first adopt for copying a figure from high up. Your life should always be arranged just as if you were studying theology or philosophy or other theories. That is to say, eating and drinking moderately at least twice a day, electing digestible and wholesome dishes and light wines, saving and sparing your hand, preserving it from such strains as heavy, heaving stones, crowbar, and many other things which are bad for your hand, from giving them a chance to weary it. This is another cause which, if you indulge it, can make your hand so unsteady that it will waver more and flutter far more than leaves do in the wind, and this is indulging too much in the company of women. Let us get back to our subject. Have a sort of pouch made of pasteboard or just thin wood, made large enough in every dimension for you to put in a royal folio, that is, a half. And this is good for you to keep your drawings in, and likewise to hold the paper on for drawing. Then always go out alone, or in such company as will be inclined to do as you do, and not apt to disturb you. And the more understanding this company displays, the better it is for you. When you are in churches or chapels and beginning to draw, consider in the first place from what section you think you wish to copy a scene or a figure, and notice where its dark and halftones and highlights come. And this means that you have to apply your shadow with washes of ink, to leave the natural ground in the halftones, and to apply the highlights with white lead. Chapter, I think that's 20, 25. I don't know what the L is, I'm sorry. On the characters of a yellow color called ochre, a natural color known as ochre is yellow. This color is found in the earth and the mountains, where there are found certain seams resembling sulfur, and where these seams are, there is found cinnober and terra verte and other kinds of colors. I found this when I was guided one day by Andrea Cennini, my father, who led me through the territory of Colle de Valdialsa, close to the borders of the Casole, at the beginning of the forest of the commune of Colle, above a township called Domateria. And upon reaching a little valley, a very wide, steep place, scraping the steep with a spade, I beheld seams of many kinds of color: ochre, dark and light cinnober, blue and white, and this I held the greatest wonder in the world, that white could exist in a seam of earth, advising you that I made a trial of this white, and found it fat, unfit for flesh color. In this place there was also a seam of black color, and these colors showed up in this earth just at the way a wrinkle shows in the face of a man or a woman. To go back to the ochre color, I picked out the wrinkle of this color with a penknife, and I do assure you that I never tried a handsomer, more perfect ochre color. It did not come out so light as a Giolini, a little bit darker, but for hair and for costumes I shall teach you later. I never found a better color than this ochre color. It is of two sorts, light and dark. Each color calls for the same method of working up with the clear water, and work it up thoroughly, for it goes on getting better. And know that this ochre is an all-round color, especially for work in fresco, for it is used with other mixture, as I shall explain to you, for flesh colors, for draperies, for painted mountains and buildings and horses, and in general for many purposes. And this color is coarse by nature. Chapter L, XVII. I'm not sure what that is. I think that's the year. Of the method and system for working on a wall, that is, in fresco and on painting and doing flesh, for a youthful face, in the name of the most holy Trinity, I wish to start you on painting. Begin in the first place with working on a wall, and for that I will teach you step by step the method which you should follow. When you want to work on a wall, which is most agreeable and impressive kind of work, first of all get some lime and some sand, each of them well sifted, and if the lime is very fat and fresh, it calls for 2 parts sand and the third part lime, and wet them up well with water, and wet up enough to last you for 2 or 3 weeks, and let it stand for a day or so until the heat goes out of it. For when it is so hot, the plaster which you put on cracks afterwards. When you are ready to plaster, first sweep the wall well and wet it down thoroughly, for you cannot get it too wet. And take your lime mortar, well worked over a trowel at a time, and plaster once or twice to begin with, to get the plaster flat on the wall. Then you want to work. Remember first to make this plaster quite uneven and fairly rough. Then when the plaster is dry, take the charcoal and draw and compose according to the scene or figures which you have to do. And take all your measurements carefully, snapping lines first, getting the centers of the spaces, then snap some, and take the levels from them. And this line which you snap through the center to get the level must have a plumb bob at the foot, and then put one point of the big compasses on the line and give the compasses a half turn on the underside. Then put the point of the compasses on the middle intersection of one line with the other, and swing the other semicircle on the upper side, and you will find that you make a little slanted cross on the right side, formed by the intersection of the lines. From the left side, apply the line to be snapped in such a way that it lies right over both the little crosses, and you will find that your line is horizontal by level. Then compose your the scene or figures with charcoal, as I have described, and always keep your areas in scale and regular. Then take a small pointed bristle brush and a little ochre without tempera, as thin as water, and proceed to copy and draw in your figures, shadowing as you did with washes. When you are learning to draw, then take a bunch of feathers and sweep the drawing free of sharp charcoal. Then take a little cenoper without tempera, and with a fine pointed brush proceed to mark out noses, eyes, the hair, and all the accents and outlines of the figures, and see to it that these figures are properly adjusted in all their dimensions. For these give you a chance to know and allow for the figures which you have to paint. Then start making your ornaments or whatever you want to do around the outside, and when you are ready, take some of the aforesaid lime mortar, well worked over with the spade and trowel, successively, so that it seems like an ointment. Then consider in your own mind how much work you can do in a day. For whatever you plaster, you ought to finish it up. It is true that sometimes in winter and damp weather, working on a stone wall, the plaster will occasionally keep fresh until the next day, but do not delay if you can help it, because working on the fresh plaster, that day is the strongest tempera and the best and most delightful kind of work. So then plaster a section with plaster, fairly thin but not excessively, and quite even. First wetting down the old plaster, then take your large bristle brush in your hand, dip it in clear water, beat it and sprinkle over your plaster, and with a little block the size of the palm of your hand, proceed to rub with a circular motion over the surface of the well-moistened plaster, so that the little block may succeed in removing mortar whenever there is too much, and supplying it wherever there is not enough, and in evening up your plaster nicely. Then wet the plaster with that brush if you need to, and rub over the plaster with the point of your trowel, very straight and clean. Then snap your lines in the same system and dimensions which you adopted previously on the plaster underneath. And let us suppose that in a day you have just one head to do, a youthful saints like our most holy ladies. When you have got the mortar of your plaster all smoothed down, take a little dish, a glazed one, for all your dishes to be glazed in and tapered like a goblet or drinking glass, and they should have a good heavy base at the foot to keep them steady so as not to spill the colors. Take as much as a bean of well ground ochre, the dark kind, for there are two kinds of ochre, light and dark. And if you have none of the dark, take some of the light, put it in your little dish. Take a little black, the size of a lentil, mix it with this ochre. Take a little lime white, as much as a third of a bean. Take as much light cinnabrine as the tip of a penknife will hold. Mix it up with the aforesaid colors all together in order, and get this color dripping wet with clear water without any tempera. Make a fine pointed brush out of flexible thin bristles to fit into the quill of a goose feather, and with the brush indicate the face which you wish to do, remembering to divide the face into three parts, that is, the forehead, the nose, and the chin, counting the mouth, and with your brush almost dry, gradually apply this color, known in Florence as Verdece and in Siena as Brazil. When you have got the shape of the face drawn in, and if it seems not to have come out the way you want it, in its proportions, or in any other respect, you can undo it and repair it by rubbing over the plaster with a big bristle brush dipped in water. Then take a little terra verte in another dish, well thinned out, and with a bristle brush half squeezed out between the thumb and forefinger of your left hand, start shading under the chin and mostly on the side where the face is to be darkest, and go on by shaping up the underside of the mouth and the sides of the mouth under the nose, and on the side under the eyebrows, especially in toward the nose, a little in the end of the eye toward the ear, and in this way you pick out the whole of the face and the hands wherever flesh color is to come. Then take a pointed maneuver brush and crisp it up neatly, all the outlines, nose, eyes, lips, and ears with this verdicchio. There are some masters who, at this point, when the face is in this stage, take a little lime, white thinned with water, and very systematically pick out the prominences and reliefs of the countenance. Then they put a little pink on the lips and some little apples on the cheek. Next, they go over it with a little wash of thin flesh color, and it is all painted except for touching in the reliefs afterwards with a little white. It is a good system. Some begin by laying in the face with flesh color, then they shape it up with a little verdicchio and flesh color, touching it in with some highlights, and it is finished. This is a method of those who know little about the profession, but you follow this method in everything which I shall teach you about painting. For Giotto, the great master, followed it. He had Taddeo Gaddi of Florence as his pupil for 24 years, and he was his godson. Taddeo had Agnolo as his son. Agnolo had me for 12 years, and so he started me on this method, by means of which Agnolo painted much more handsomely and freshly than Taddeo his father did. First, take a little dish, put a little lime white into it, a little bit will do, and a little light cinnabrine, about equal parts. Temper them quite thin with clear water. With the aforesaid bristle brush, soft and well equipped with your fingers, bristle brush, soft and well squeezed with your fingers, go over the face. Then you have got it, indicated with a terra verde, and with this pink touch in the lips and the apples of the cheek. My master used to put these apples more toward the ear than toward the nose, because they help to give relief to the face and soften these apples at the edges. Then take 3 little dishes, which you divide into 3 sections of flesh color. Have the darkest half again as light as the pink color, and the other 2 each 1 degree lighter. Now take the little dish of the lightest one, and with a very soft, rather blunt bristle brush, take some of this flesh color, squeezing the brush with your fingers, and shape up all the reliefs of the face. Then take the little dish of the intermediate flesh color and proceed to pick out all the halftones of the face and of the hands and feet and of the body when you are doing a nude. Then take the dish of the third flesh color and start into the accents of the shadows, always contriving that in the accents the terra verde may not fail to tell, and go on blending one flesh color into another. In this way many times, until it is well laid in as nature promises, and take great care. If you want your work to come out very fresh, contrive not to let your brush leave its course with any given flesh color, except to blend one delicately with another. With skillful handling, but if you attend to working and getting your hand in practice, it will be clearer to you than seeing it in writing. When you have applied your flesh colors, make another much lighter one, almost white, and go over the eyebrows with it, over the relief of the nose, over the top of the chin and of the eyelid. Then take a sharp Minerva brush and do the whites of the eyes with pure white, and the tip of the nose and a tiny bit on the side of the mouth, and touch in all such slight reliefs. Then take a little black in another little dish, and with the same brush mark out the outline of the eyes over the pupils of the eyes, and do the nostrils in the nose and the openings in the ears. Then take a little dark cinnober and in a little dish mark out under the eyes and around the nose, the eyebrows, the mouth, and do a little shading under the upper lip. For that wants to come out a little bit darker than the underlip. Before you mark out the outlines in this way, take this brush, touch up the hair with the verdicchio. Then with this brush, shape up this hair with white. Then take a wash of light ochre and with a blunt bristle brush, work back over this hair as if you were doing flesh. Then with the same brush, shape up the accents with some dark ochre. Then with a sharp little Minerva brush and light ochre and lime white, shape up the reliefs of the hair. Then by marking out with the cinnober, shape up the outlines and the accents of the hair as you did the face as a whole, and let this suffice you for a youthful face. From nature, if you want to acquire a good style for mountains and to have them look natural, get some large stones, rugged and not cleaned up, and copy them from nature, applying the lights and the darks as your system requires. Chapter CIV. The system by which you should prepare to acquire the skill to work on panel. Know that there ought to not to be less time spent in learning than this. To begin as a shop boy, studying for 1 year to get practice in drawing on the little panel, next to serve in a shop under some master to learn how to work at all the branches which pertain to our profession, and stay and begin the working up of colors, and to learn to boil the sizes and grind the gessos, and to get experience in gessoing anconas, and modeling and scraping them, gilding and stamping for the space of a good 6 years. Then to get experience in painting, embellishing with mordants, making cloths of gold, getting practice in working on the wall for 6 more years, drawing all the time, never leaving off either on holidays or on work days. And in this way, your talent, though much practice, will develop into real ability. Otherwise, if you follow other systems, you need never hope that they will reach any high degree of perfection. For there are many who say that they have mastered the profession without having served under masters. Do not believe it. For I give you the example of this book, even if you study it by day and night, if you do not see some practice under some master, you will never amount to anything, nor will you ever be able to hold your head up in the company of masters. Beginning to work on panel on the same of the most holy Trinity, always invoking that name and that of the glorious Virgin Mary. Chapter CIV. How to paint a panel. I believe that by yourself you will have enough understanding with your experience to train yourself by following this method to understand working neatly with various kinds of cloth, and by the grace of God it is time for us to come to painting on panel. And let me tell you that doing a panel is really a gentleman's job, for you may do anything you want to with velvets on your back. And it is true that painting of the panel is carried out just as I taught you to work in fresco, except that you vary it in 3 respects. The first, that you always want to work on draperies and buildings before faces. The second is that you must always temper your colors with yolk of egg and get them tempered thoroughly, always as much yolk as the color which you are tempering. The third is that the colors want to be more choice and well worked up like water. And for your great pleasure, always start by doing draperies with, I think that's Lao, by the same system which I showed you for fresco. That is, leave the first value in its own color and take the 2 parts of Lao color and the third of white lead, and when this is tempered, step up 3 values from it, which vary slightly from each other, tempered well, as I have told you, and always made lighter with white lead well worked up. Then set your ancona up in front of you, and mind you, always keep it covered with a sheet for the sake of the gold and the gessos, so that they may not be injured by dust, and that your jobs may quit your hands very clean. Then take a rather blunt maneuver brush and start to apply the dark color, shaping up the folds where the dark part of the figure is to come, and in the usual way to take the middle color and lay in the backs and reliefs of the dark folds, and begin with this color to shape up the folds of the relief and around toward the light part of the figure, and shape it up once more in this way. Then take the light color and lay in the reliefs and the backs of the light part of the figure, and in this way go back once again to the first dark folds of the figure with the dark color, and carry on as you began, with these colors over and over again, but first one and then the other one, laying them afresh, blending them skillfully, softening delicately, and with this you have enough time so that you can get up from your work and rest yourself for a while and reflect this work of yours. Work on panels wants to be done with much enjoyment. When you have got it all well laid out and these colors blended, make another lighter at one out of the lightest, always washing the brush between one color and the next. And out of this lighter one, make another lighter still, and have the variations among them very light. Then touch in with pure white lead tempered, as has been said, and touch in with it over the strongest reliefs, and make the darks gradually in the same way until you finally touch in the strongest darks with pure lay. And bear this in mind, just as you prepared your colors value by value, so you put them into your little dishes value by value, so as not to take one of them for another by mistake. And use the same system likewise for any color which you want to paint, whether reds or whites or yellows or greens. But if you want to make a lovely violet color, take good choice lay and good choice fine ultramarine blue, and with this mixture and with white lead, make up your colors value by value, always tempering them. If you wish to do a drapery with blue with lights on it, make it lighter in this way with white lead and execute it in the way described above as opposed to fresco. And then here is the next page for chapter 2, Lorenzetto Girabetta. This is the end of Cennini's Craftsman Handbook. Thank you.